Story number 1. Shadows of Rockefeller. I've always been fascinated by the stories that cities hold, especially New York. The towering skyscrapers, the endless hustle, and the blend of history and modernity make it a living, breathing entity. But there's one story that has always sent chills down my spine. A tale of tragedy and lingering spirits that seems to haunt the very heart of Rockefeller Center every Christmas. It was December 1931, a year marked by economic hardship and uncertainty. I was a young journalist, eager to make a name for myself by uncovering the hidden stories of the city. Rockefeller Center was under construction, a sprawling project that promised to redefine the skyline. The site was a hive of activity, workers shouting orders, machinery roaring, and the smell of fresh concrete filling the air. Amidst this chaos, one story stood out: a construction worker named Thomas Bennett who had died under mysterious circumstances. The story went that Thomas had been working late one evening, overseeing the installation of the massive steel beams that would support the grand Christmas tree lighting ceremony. He had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only his tools scattered around the site. No one knew what had happened to him, and rumors of foul play and supernatural interference began to circulate. Years later, the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree lighting became an iconic tradition, drawing crowds from all over the world. Every year, amidst the glittering lights and festive cheer, some attendees reported seeing a shadowy figure standing beside the tree. Dressed in a construction worker's uniform, they described him as having a hollow, sorrowful presence, his eyes empty voids that seemed to look right through you. Despite numerous sightings, no one could confirm his identity or the nature of his existence. Was it Thomas Bennett's spirit, forever bound to the site of his untimely death? Or was it merely a coincidence, the product of overactive imaginations fueled by the grandeur of the event? I decided to investigate, armed with my notepad, camera, and a healthy dose of skepticism. I attended the Christmas tree lighting ceremony that December. The night was crisp, the sky clear, and the crowd buzzed with excitement. Families bundled in warm coats, children clutching hot cocoa, and the scent of roasted chestnuts filled the air. The tree stood tall and magnificent, adorned with thousands of lights and intricate decorations that sparkled like stars against the night sky. As the countdown began, the energy in the crowd intensified. 10, 9, 8. The conductor led the crowd in unison, their voices rising with anticipation. 3, 2, 1. With a burst of light, the tree ignited, each bulb flickering to life in a dazzling display. Cheers erupted around me, the sound echoing off the surrounding skyscrapers. But amidst the celebration, I felt an inexplicable chill run down my spine. A sudden gust of wind swept through the area, causing the lights to flicker ominously. I glanced around, trying to shake off the unease, when I saw him, a shadowy figure standing near the base of the tree. He was dressed in a construction worker's uniform, his posture slumped, and his eyes seemingly fixed on the tree. My heart raced as I watched him, a sense of dread settling over me. I approached cautiously, trying to get a closer look. The crowd around me continued to cheer, oblivious to his presence. As I drew nearer, the figure seemed to fade, blending into the shadows cast by the tree's lights. I reached out to touch him, but my hand passed through his form as if he were made of smoke. The chill intensified, and I could hear faint whispers carried by the wind, fragments of conversations and the distant sound of construction machinery. Determined to uncover the truth, I decided to speak with some of the longtime workers at Rockefeller Center. I found an old man named George, a retired foreman who had worked on the center's construction for decades. His face was weathered, his eyes tired but sharp with the knowledge of years past. "George, have you ever heard of a worker named Thomas Bennett who disappeared during the Christmas tree lighting construction?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. George sighed, rubbing his temples. I remember that night well. Thomas was a good lad, dedicated to his work. One evening, He stayed late to make sure everything was perfect for the tree lighting. Next morning, he was gone. No one knows what happened to him. Some say he got lost in the labyrinth of steel beams and never found his way out. Others whisper of darker things, things that go bump in the night. I felt a shiver run through me. Do you think his spirit is still here, watching over the tree lighting? George looked at me thoughtfully. There have been many sightings over the years. People say they see him around the tree, especially during the lighting ceremony. Whether it's a ghost or just a man lost in his own grief, I can't say, but there's no denying the eerie feeling that hangs over Rockefeller Center every Christmas. I thanked George and made my way back to my hotel, my mind swirling with questions and possibilities. That night, couldn't sleep, the image of the shadowy man lingering in my thoughts. I decided to return to Rockefeller Center the following evening, armed with my camera and a flashlight, determined to capture evidence of the mysterious figure. The next Christmas tree lighting was approaching, and the city was abuzz with anticipation. I arrived early, taking a seat near the base of the tree, my camera ready to document any unusual activity. As the countdown began, the excitement in the air was palpable once more. 10, 9, 8. The crowd's energy surged. 3, 2, 1. The tree lit up, its lights reflecting in my eyes. But once again, amidst the celebration, I felt that same chill. I scanned the crowd, heart pounding, until I saw him, the shadowy figure standing near the tree, his presence unmistakable. This time, I was prepared. I began recording, capturing his every movement as he remained motionless, staring at the tree with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. I took a step closer, trying to remain calm. "Thomas Bennett?" I called out softly, my voice steady despite the fear gnawing at me. He didn't respond. Instead, the wind picked up, causing the lights to flicker and the whispers to grow louder, more distinct. "Help us find peace." The voices seemed to echo, intertwining with the sounds of the storm outside. Determined to reach out, I took another step forward, my hand outstretched. As I did, the figure began to fade, his form dissolving into the air like smoke. I reached out to grab him, but my hand passed through his ethereal form, leaving me grasping at nothing. The whispers faded, replaced by an oppressive silence that hung heavy in the air. The crowd around me began to notice, some pointing and murmuring, others retreating into their families, seeking comfort from the unexplained phenomenon. I reviewed the footage on my camera, the screen revealing the fleeting image of the ghostly figure and the disembodied whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. That night, I met with George once more, sharing my findings and the recordings I had captured. His eyes widened as he listened, the weight of his years of experience evident in his expression. "Tom, you've captured something real. Thomas Bennett's spirit isn't just a story. It's a part of Rockefeller Center's history. Every Christmas, his presence reminds us of the lives lost and the unseen forces that linger in the shadows of our celebrations." I nodded, understanding the depth of his words. "What can we do to help him find peace?" George pondered for a moment before responding. "Perhaps by acknowledging his presence, honoring his memory, we can ease his restless spirit. Organize a memorial, a moment of silence dedicated to those who've been lost. It might just give Thomas the closure he needs." Inspired by George's suggestion, I took it upon myself to organize a memorial event during the next Christmas tree lighting. I reached out to local historians, spiritual leaders, and anyone willing to lend a hand in honoring the memory of Thomas Bennett and the countless others who had been lost to the shadows of Rockefeller Center. The following year, the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree lighting took on a new significance. Amidst the festivities, a moment of silence was held in memory of those who had disappeared, their lives and stories honored by the collective remembrance of the crowd. I watched as people bowed their heads, their thoughts and prayers reaching out into the night. As the countdown began once more, I felt a sense of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, we could bring peace to the restless spirits that haunted the site. 10, 9, 8. The crowd's voices rose in unity. 3, 2, 1. The tree lit up, brighter than ever, its lights a beacon of hope and remembrance. And then, amidst the sparkling lights and the joyful cheers, I saw him again, Thomas Bennett. This time, he stood beside the tree, his figure more defined, his sorrow replaced by a serene calm. He looked around, his eyes meeting mine with a silent gratitude, before he faded into the light, his spirit finally finding the peace it had sought for decades. The crowd erupted in applause, unaware of the supernatural exchange that had just taken place. I felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that we had made a difference, that Thomas and the others had been remembered and honored. The shadows that once lingered were now replaced by the radiant lights of the tree, a testament to the enduring power of remembrance and compassion. Years have passed since that transformative Christmas, but the story of Thomas Bennett and the memorial event remains a poignant reminder of the lives lost and the spirits that linger in the story. Number 2. The vanishing in the snowstorm. I never believed in ghosts. Growing up in the heart of New York City, surrounded by the relentless pace and ceaseless noise, I found comfort in the tangible, the concrete. But that changed one fateful Christmas in 1978, beneath the towering Rockefeller Center Christmas tree, where snowstorm and sorrow intertwined to leave an indelible mark on my soul. It was a cold December evening, the kind that bites through layers of clothing and seeps into your bones. The city was blanketed in a thick layer of snow, transforming the bustling streets into a winter wonderland. The Rockefeller Center Christmas tree lighting was the highlight of the season, drawing crowds from all over the city to witness the grand spectacle. This year, the weather forecast had predicted a mild winter, but as the night progressed, the storm intensified, swirling snowflakes into a chaotic dance of white and gray. I had been working late at the office, the stress of deadlines weighing heavily on me, when my wife, Linda, insisted we attend the tree lighting with our young daughter, Emily. I reluctantly agreed. She needed a break, and I figured a family outing would do us good. Little did I know, it would become a night of terror and mystery that I would never forget. We arrived early, securing a spot near the base of the tree. The air was filled with the sounds of laughter, carols, and the occasional cheer as people marveled at the massive evergreen adorned with thousands of lights and intricate decorations. Emily was mesmerized, her eyes wide with wonder as she pointed at the glittering ornaments and the star that crowned the tree. As the countdown began, the anticipation in the crowd was electric. 10, 9, 8. The conductor raised his baton, and the murmurs of the crowd grew louder. 3, 2, 1. With a burst of light, the tree ignited, each bulb flickering to life in a dazzling display. Cheers erupted around us, and for a moment, the storm seemed to hold its breath. The chaos of the snowstorm muted by the brilliance of the lights. We clapped and laughed, basking in the warmth of the moment despite the biting cold. But then, amidst the celebration, something felt inexplicably wrong. A sudden gust of wind whipped through the area, sending snowflakes swirling around us like ethereal specters. The lights of the tree flickered ominously, casting long, distorted shadows that danced across the snow-covered ground. The joyful sounds of the crowd began to fade, replaced by a haunting silence that pressed down on us like a heavy blanket. "Did you feel that?" I asked Linda, my voice tinged with unease. She nodded, her smile faltering. "It's probably just the wind, Tom. Nothing to worry about." But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. As the storm raged on, the temperature dropped further, and the lights of the tree dimmed, struggling against the fierce winds. The crowd started to thin, people seeking shelter from the storm, but a sense of dread hung in the air, making everyone uneasy. That's when I saw her, a young girl standing near the edge of the crowd, her presence almost ethereal against the backdrop of the storm. She was dressed in a vintage Christmas dress, her hair neatly parted and styled, a stark contrast to the modern attire surrounding her. Emily tugged at Linda's sleeve, pointing toward the girl. "Daddy, look at her," she said, her voice filled with curiosity. I turned to see the girl standing alone, her eyes fixed on the tree, a look of longing etched on her face. Something about her presence was unsettling, a silent sorrow that seemed to emanate from her very being. I approached cautiously, the snow crunching beneath my feet, the wind howling around us like a chorus of lost souls. "Hi there," I called out softly, trying to mask my apprehension. "Are you okay?" The girl turned slowly to face me, her eyes meeting mine with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. "I can't find my way home," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm. Before I could respond, a blinding flash of light enveloped her, and in an instant, she vanished into thin air. I stood there, frozen, my heart pounding in my chest, as the crowd around us looked on in confusion and fear. "Tom, what's happening?" Linda's voice broke through my reverie, her eyes wide with concern. I shook my head, struggling to process what I had just witnessed. "I don't know. We need to get out of here." We turned to leave, but the storm seemed to intensify, the wind howling louder, the snow falling faster. The path back to our car was obscured by the swirling blizzard, visibility reduced to mere feet. Panic set in as we realized we were lost, the familiar streets now unrecognizable under the weight of the storm. As we trudged through the snow, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being followed. Every step I took was matched by a distant echo, a soft, sorrowful crying that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. I glanced over my shoulder, but there was no one there, just the endless expanse of white, the storm swallowing up any signs of life. "Linda, Emily, keep moving," I urged, my voice steady despite the fear gnawing at me. "We'll find a place to shelter." We pressed on, the storm relentless, the cold seeping into our bones. The crying grew louder, more insistent, a mournful lament that echoed through the night. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the ghostly encounter, the faceless sorrow that seemed to chase us through the snow. Just when I thought we couldn't go any further, the storm began to subside, the winds dying down as if respecting our plea for mercy. The snow continued to fall, but the intensity lessened, allowing us to see a dim outline of our car parked a few blocks away. Relief washed over me as we quickened our pace, eager to reach the warmth and safety of our vehicle. But as we approached the car, the sense of dread returned, the feeling of being watched intensifying. I turned once more, expecting to see the ghostly girl, but there was nothing, only the remnants of the storm and the silent, snowy night. We climbed into the car, shivering from the cold and the fear that had taken hold of us. I started the engine, the heater roaring to life, providing a welcome blast of warmth. As we drove away, the memory of the crying girl lingered, a haunting reminder of the night's events. In the weeks that followed, I couldn't shake the experience. I reached out to the local authorities, inquiring about the girl's disappearance, but there was no record of a missing child that night. The only explanation they offered was the possibility of a freak accident. But deep down, I knew there was something more sinister at play. I began to research the history of Rockefeller Center, delving into old newspaper archives and talking to longtime residents. It was then that I uncovered the tragic story of Eleanor Thompson, a young girl who had vanished during the Christmas tree lighting ceremony in 1957. Her disappearance had never been solved, and rumors of her restless spirit lingered, especially during the holiday season. The parallels between Eleanor's story and my own experience were uncanny. It was as if the spirits of the past had reached out, intertwining their sorrow with our present, creating a cycle of loss and longing that spanned decades. The crying girl in 1978 was Eleanor, trapped in an eternal loop of her own tragedy, forever seeking the warmth and joy that eluded her. Determined to help Eleanor find peace, I returned to Rockefeller Center the following Christmas, armed with knowledge and a desire to break the cycle of sorrow. The city was once again blanketed in snow, the atmosphere thick with anticipation and festive cheer. I found a quiet spot near the tree, the same place where the past had unfolded, and prepared myself for what was to come. As the countdown began, I felt a chill in the air, the same eerie presence that had haunted me years before. 10, 9, 8. The crowd's excitement built, but I focused on my mission, determined to reach out to Eleanor. 3, 2, 1. The tree ignited, the lights flickering to life in a brilliant display. I stood there, watching as the crowd erupted in cheers, my eyes searching for any sign of Eleanor. And then, amidst the glittering lights and the swirling snow, I saw her, a young girl in a vintage Christmas dress, standing near the base of the tree, her eyes filled with sorrow and longing. "Hello, Eleanor," I whispered, my voice steady despite the fear that bubbled within me. "I'm here to help you." She turned slowly, her eyes meeting mine, and I felt a surge of empathy and sadness wash over me. "I can't find my way home," she whispered, her voice carrying the weight of years of unresolved pain. I reached out, extending my hand toward her. "I'll help you. You don't have to be alone." As our hands touched, a wave of warmth enveloped us, the cold night giving way to a sense of peace. The cries and whispers faded, replaced by a profound silence that felt like a balm for our weary souls. Eleanor's form began to glow, the sorrow in her eyes lifting as she smiled, a smile filled with gratitude and relief. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice now gentle and serene. "You've given me peace." With that, she began to fade, her presence dissipating into the night air, leaving behind a sense of calm and fulfillment. The storm had finally released its hold, the cycle of sorrow broken by our connection and understanding. As I watched her disappear, I felt a sense of closure, a peace that had eluded me for so long. The Rockefeller Center Christmas tree stood tall and magnificent, its lights shining brighter than ever, a symbol of hope and renewal. The crowd around me continued their celebrations, unaware of the silent exchange that had just taken place. A moment of humanity bridging the gap between the living and the lost. That Christmas, I learned that sometimes, the greatest horrors are not the supernatural forces that chase us through snowstorms, but the unresolved pain and longing that linger long after the chaos has passed. Eleanor's spirit had been trapped by her own sorrow, but through empathy and determination, I had helped her find the peace she so desperately sought. Years later, the memory of that night remains a haunting reminder of the thin veil between our world and the spirits that dwell in shadows. Every Christmas, as the Rockefeller Center tree lights up the city, I think of Eleanor and the power of compassion to bridge the divide between life and death. And though I never fully believed in ghosts again, I carry with me the lesson that sometimes the most terrifying encounters are the ones that touch our hearts and souls, reminding us of the enduring power of love and the importance of never forgetting those who have been lost. Story number 3. Shadows beneath the lights. I never believed in ghosts, growing up in a pragmatic household. Skepticism was our family's cornerstone. Yet, standing beneath the towering Rockefeller Center Christmas tree on that fateful December night in 1960, I felt a chill that defied logic, a prelude to a nightmare I couldn't have imagined. My name is Jonathan Miles, and that Christmas Eve marked the beginning of a journey that would forever alter my understanding of the unseen. My wife, Margaret, our 2 children, Lily and Ben, and I had traveled from our suburban home to New York City to experience the grandeur of the annual tree lighting ceremony. It was a tradition we cherished, a symbol of hope and unity during the long winter months. The evening was crisp, the air filled with the scent of roasted chestnuts and hot cocoa wafting from nearby stands. The streets buzzed with excitement, families bundled in warm coats, faces lit with anticipation. The tree itself stood majestic, adorned with thousands of twinkling lights and ornate decorations that sparkled against the night sky. We found a perfect spot near the base, our breaths visible in the cold air as we settled in for the spectacle. As the countdown began, the energy in the crowd surged. 10, 9, 8. The voices rose in unison, a harmonious blend of joy and anticipation. 3, 2, 1. With a burst of light, the tree ignited, each bulb flickering to life in a dazzling display. Cheers erupted around us, children laughing and pointing at the magnificent sight. We joined in the applause, the warmth of the moment enveloping us. But amidst the celebration, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. It was subtle at first, a slight chill that seemed to seep through my coat, a fleeting shadow at the edge of my vision. I glanced around, noticing a few others casting uneasy glances toward a darkened corner near the tree. My heart quickened, a sense of unease settling over me like a heavy blanket. As the crowd began to disperse, families heading back to their hotels or continuing their evening festivities, I decided to take a closer look at the tree, drawn by an inexplicable urge. Margaret, Lily, and Ben stayed behind, engrossed in the remnants of the celebration. I wandered through the crowd, the noise of departing families fading into a distant hum as I approached the tree. Standing near the base, I admired the intricate decorations, my fingers tracing the delicate ornaments that hung from the branches. It was then that I felt it, a sudden, icy breeze brushing against my back. I turned swiftly, expecting to see someone brushing past. But there was no one there. The area was crowded, yet I couldn't see anyone nearby who could have caused the chill. Shaking off the discomfort, I continued to marvel at the tree's beauty. That's when I noticed her, a woman standing just beyond the crowd, her figure partially obscured by the shadows. She was dressed in an old-fashioned Christmas gown, the fabric flowing gracefully around her. Her presence was both captivating and eerie, a stark contrast to the modern festivities surrounding her. I felt an inexplicable pull, a desire to approach her despite the gnawing fear in my gut. As I took a step forward, the laughter and chatter of the crowd seemed to fade, the world narrowing down to just the two of us. The woman turned slowly, her face partially hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, I felt a connection that transcended time and space. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she whispered, her voice soft yet resonant, carrying an otherworldly quality that sent shivers down my spine. I nodded, unable to find my voice. "Yes, it's incredible." She smiled, a sad, wistful expression that tugged at my heart. "The lights, they remind us of brighter days." Before I could respond, I felt a sharp gust of wind, the temperature plummeting once more. I reached out, intending to touch her hand, but as I did, she vanished, dissolving into the cold air like mist under the morning sun. My hand grasped at empty space, and I staggered back, my mind racing to comprehend what had just happened. Panic set in as I scanned the area, trying to locate her, but she was gone, leaving me alone amidst the departing crowd. The whispers of the night returned, blending with the distant sounds of the city, but the sense of her presence lingered, a haunting echo in the depths of my soul. I hurried back to my family, my heart pounding in my chest. Margaret looked up, concern etched on her face. "Everything okay, John?" I forced a smile, though my hands trembled. "Yeah, just lost in thought." But as we walked away from the tree, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me, a shadow lingering at the edge of my vision. The rest of the evening passed uneventfully, but the encounter left an indelible mark on me. That night, couldn't sleep, the image of the mysterious woman haunting my every thought. The days that followed were filled with curiosity and fear. I reached out to others who had attended the ceremony, discovering that I wasn't alone in my experience. Several individuals reported feeling an unexplainable presence, hearing whispers in the night, and witnessing fleeting apparitions near the tree. The most unsettling account came from a man named Robert, who recounted a similar encounter with a faceless figure in old-fashioned attire. Determined to uncover the truth, I delved into the history of Rockefeller Center and the Christmas tree lighting ceremony. I discovered that the site had been the backdrop for numerous tragedies and mysterious occurrences over the years. Old newspapers and archived records spoke of disappearances, ghostly apparitions, and inexplicable phenomena that had plagued the area long before my encounter. One story stood out, a tale of Eleanor Whitaker, a woman who had mysteriously vanished during the tree lighting ceremony in 1957. Her disappearance had never been solved, leaving behind only rumors of supernatural involvement and lingering spirits that haunted the grounds. The more I learned, the more I felt a connection to Eleanor, as if her story was entwined with my own. Driven by a need for answers, I decided to return to Rockefeller Center one Christmas Eve, hoping to communicate with the spirit that had touched my life. Armed with my notebook, camera, and a newfound sense of purpose, I embarked on a journey that would lead me deeper into the heart of the mystery. That night, the city was blanketed in snow, the streets illuminated by the soft glow of holiday lights. The tree stood as magnificent as ever, its lights twinkling like stars against the dark sky. I arrived early, finding a secluded spot near the base of the tree, away from the crowds. The air was crisp, the silence profound, broken only by the distant sounds of carolers and the occasional gust of wind. I set up my equipment, determined to document any signs of paranormal activity. As midnight approached, the anticipation built once more. The countdown began, and the energy in the air shifted, a sense of expectation mingling with an undercurrent of unease. 10, 9, 8. The crowd's excitement surged. 3, 2, 1. With the same breathless anticipation as before, the tree lights ignited, casting a brilliant glow that bathed the area in festive cheer. But this time, amidst the celebration, the atmosphere felt heavier, laden with unspoken sorrow. I scanned the crowd, my eyes searching for any sign of Eleanor, or whoever it was that had reached out to me. That's when I saw her again, a woman in an old-fashioned Christmas gown, her presence unmistakable against the modern backdrop. She stood near the tree, her eyes meeting mine with a sorrow that mirrored my own. This time, I didn't hesitate. I approached her, each step filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "Are you Eleanor?" I asked softly, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, a tear slipping down her pale cheek. "I couldn't leave. My children are lost, and I can't find peace." Her words pierced my heart, the anguish in her voice echoing the pain I felt from her disappearance years ago. "What can I do to help you?" I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil within me. She reached out, her hand trembling as she touched mine. "You must help us remember, to honor our stories. Only then can we find peace." As I held her hand, a surge of energy enveloped us, the lights of the tree swirling around us in a kaleidoscope of colors. The air grew thick with whispers, voices of those who had lost their way, seeking closure and remembrance. The snowflakes seemed to dance around us, each one a symbol of lost dreams and unfulfilled wishes. In that moment, I understood that Eleanor and her children were trapped in a loop of their own sorrow, bound to the tree by memories that refused to fade. By acknowledging their pain and honoring their stories, I could help them break free from the chains that held them captive. I promised her that I would do everything in my power to ensure their stories were told, to bring light to their darkness. As the energy around us dissipated, she smiled, a peaceful expression that had eluded her for so long. "Thank you," she whispered before fading into the night, leaving behind a sense of calm and closure that had been missing for decades. The following days were a whirlwind of activity as I compiled my findings, reaching out to historians, paranormal experts, and anyone willing to listen to the tales of Eleanor Whitaker and her lost children. The story spread, capturing the imagination of the public and shedding light on the mysterious disappearances that had plagued Rockefeller Center. That Christmas, the tree stood not just as a symbol of joy, but as a beacon of remembrance and healing. The lights seemed to shine a little brighter, the decorations a little more meaningful, as if honoring the spirits that had found peace through my efforts. I felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that I had played a part in bringing closure to those who had been forgotten by time. Years later, the memory of that night remains vivid, a testament to the power of empathy and the importance of remembering those who have been lost. The Rockefeller Center Christmas tree continues to illuminate the city, its lights now carrying the stories of the past, ensuring that the shadows beneath the lights are never forgotten. And every December, as I watch the tree light up, I feel a connection to Eleanor and her children, a reminder that even in the midst of celebration, there are echoes of sorrow that deserve to be heard and honored. Their whispers have become a part of the city's heartbeat, a haunting yet beautiful reminder that some spirits linger not out of malice, but out of a desperate need to be remembered and to find peace. Story number 4. Echoes of the Rockefeller Tree. The Rockefeller Center Christmas tree lighting was always the highlight of my winter season in New York City. Every year, friends and I made the pilgrimage to witness the grand spectacle, a tradition that brought warmth to the cold December nights. It was December 2001, and the city was still reeling from the events of September. The atmosphere was a mixture of resilience and cautious optimism, and the tree lighting ceremony felt like a beacon of hope amidst the lingering shadows. I remember arriving early, bundled up against the biting wind, the streets bustling with excited tourists and locals alike. The air was thick with the scent of roasted chestnuts and the sounds of carolers warming up their voices. My friends, Sarah and Mike, had insisted on capturing every moment, their cameras and camcorders ready to document the night. We found a good spot near the base of the tree, the massive evergreen towering above us, adorned with thousands of twinkling lights and ornate decorations. The energy was palpable, the crowd buzzing with anticipation as the conductor began the countdown. 10, 9, 8. The voices rose in unison, a chorus of excitement that echoed off the surrounding skyscrapers. 3, 2, 1. With a collective breath, the tree ignited, each light flickering to life in a dazzling display. Cheers erupted around us, the sound washing over me like a warm embrace. We clapped and laughed, reveling in the magic of the moment. But amidst the celebration, something felt off, a subtle shift in the air, a chill that seemed to seep through the layers of warmth and joy. It was then that I heard it, a chortling laugh, sharp and eerie, cutting through the harmonious cheers like a knife. The sound was unlike any human laughter I had ever heard, hollow and distorted, reverberating from a dark corner near the tree. My heart skipped a beat as I glanced around, trying to locate the source. The crowd around me continued to celebrate, oblivious to the strange noise, but the laughter persisted, growing louder and more unsettling. "Did you guys hear that?" I whispered to Sarah and Mike, my voice tinged with unease. Sarah glanced around, her brow furrowing. "Hear what?" "That laugh, coming from over there," I replied, pointing toward the shadowed corner of the tree. Mike frowned, lowering his camera. "Probably just some kid messing around. Nothing to worry about." But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The laughter didn't sound natural, it had a spectral quality, as if it belonged to a ghost trapped between worlds. The crowd began to murmur, some people looking around confusedly, others shrugging it off as their imagination. I watched as a few individuals glanced toward the source of the laughter, their expressions shifting from confusion to concern. The sound seemed to ripple through the crowd, a dissonant note amidst the harmonious celebration. My skin prickled with unease, and I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead, determined to uncover the truth. I nudged Sarah and Mike. "We need to check this out. It might be something weird." Sarah hesitated, her eyes scanning the crowd. "Tom, maybe we should just go back. It's probably nothing." But Mike was already moving toward the edge of the crowd, curiosity getting the better of him. "Come on, Sarah, let's see what's going on." Reluctantly, Sarah followed, and we edged closer to the dark corner where the laughter emanated. The area was less crowded, the lights of the tree casting long shadows that danced eerily in the dim light. As we approached, the laughter seemed to distort further, blending with the distant sounds of the city until it was almost impossible to discern. I reached out to steady Sarah, feeling a presence I couldn't see. Stay close. We scanned the area, but there was no one in sight. The dark corner was empty. The only thing standing out was a small, shadowed alcove that seemed to swallow the light. The laughter had stopped, leaving behind an oppressive silence that pressed down on us. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the area, causing the decorations on the tree to sway unnaturally. The temperature dropped sharply, and I saw my breath in the cold air. "We need to go," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. As we turned to leave, a figure materialized in the alcove, a man dressed in old-fashioned attire, his face obscured by shadows. He stood there, motionless, staring directly at us with eyes that seemed devoid of life. My heart raced as I took a step back, the air thick with tension. "Who are you?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady despite the fear gripping me. The man remained silent, his presence growing more oppressive. I felt a chill seep into my bones, the weight of his gaze pressing down on me. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice wavering. Without warning, the man raised his hand, and the laughter returned, this time closer and more intense. "Leave now." The disembodied voice echoed through the night. We stumbled backward, tripping over each other in our haste to escape the terrifying figure. The crowd around us began to notice the commotion, some looking alarmed, others retreating to find safety. I grabbed Sarah's arm, pulling her away from Mike, who seemed transfixed by the apparition. "Come on, Sarah," I urged, my voice cracking. "We need to get out of here." But as we turned to leave, the man reached out, his fingers elongating into claw-like appendages. The temperature plummeted further, and I felt an invisible force pulling us back toward the tree. The lights flickered violently, casting grotesque shadows that twisted and contorted into nightmarish shapes. "Run!" I shouted, pushing Sarah toward the exit. "Don't look back." We sprinted through the crowd, the oppressive atmosphere hanging over us like a dark cloud. The laughter and whispers followed, a cacophony of sorrow and rage that seemed to chase us relentlessly. My legs burned with exhaustion, and my mind raced to comprehend the supernatural encounter we had just faced. As we reached the edge of the crowd, gasping for breath, the sounds began to fade, replaced by the distant hum of the city night. We slowed to a walk, the sense of dread slowly dissipating, but the memory of the faceless man and his haunting laughter lingered like a shadow in my mind. "We need to tell someone about this," Mike said, finally breaking free from his trance-like state. But Sarah shook her head, her eyes wide with fear. "No, Tom, some things shouldn't be tampered with." I nodded, understanding her fear. The encounter felt like a glimpse into a world we weren't meant to see, a realm where sorrow and anger manifested as something terrifying and otherworldly. We decided to leave the Rockefeller Center behind, the magic of the tree overshadowed by the darkness that had briefly touched our lives. As we walked away, I couldn't help but feel that the spirits of the past had been awakened, their unresolved pain echoing through the present. The tree, once a symbol of hope and joy, now seemed to hold secrets that were best left undisturbed. The laughter, the apparition, and the oppressive presence were reminders that some forces transcended our understanding, lurking just beneath the surface of our reality. In the days that followed, the story of the faceless man at the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree lighting of 2001 spread through the city, becoming a chilling urban legend. Some dismissed it as a figment of our overactive imaginations, fueled by the excitement and the crowd's energy. But those who had experienced the strange laughter and the haunting presence knew better. Some spirits never found peace, and their echoes could reach out to the living in the most unexpected ways. I often find myself walking past Rockefeller Center during the holiday season, the trees standing tall and magnificent once more, the lights glittering like 1,000 stars, casting their warm glow over the city. But every now and then, I catch a glimpse of something or someone at the edge of my vision, a fleeting shadow or a pair of empty eyes staring back at me from the darkness. The memory of that night remains etched in my mind, a constant reminder of the thin veil between our world and the restless spirits that linger in the shadows. And as the years go by, the legend of the faceless man continues to grow, a testament to the enduring power of sorrow and the mysteries that lie hidden within the heart of the city. Some nights, when the wind howls through the skyscrapers and the lights of Rockefeller Center flicker just right, I can still hear the echoes of that eerie laughter, a haunting reminder that not all spirits find peace, and some shadows remain forever intertwined with our lives, waiting to whisper their sorrow to those who dare to listen. Story number 5. Journey of the Spirit. The Rockefeller Center Christmas tree lighting was always the highlight of my holiday season. Every year, my family and I made the pilgrimage to New York City, weaving through the throngs of excited tourists and locals alike. Our hearts light with the promise of festive cheer. The towering tree, adorned with thousands of lights and ornaments, stood as a beacon of hope and joy amidst the winter chill. It was December 1992, and as usual, the air was crisp, filled with the scent of roasted chestnuts and hot cocoa wafting from nearby stands. My wife, Linda, our 2 kids, Emily and Jake, and I arrived early, securing a spot where we could watch the entire ceremony unfold. The crowd buzzed with anticipation, faces lit with smiles and eyes wide with wonder. We huddled together, wrapped in blankets, sipping our drinks as the conductor raised his baton, signaling the beginning of the countdown. 10, 9, 8. The crowd's excitement built with each passing number. 3, 2, 1. With a collective breath, the tree ignited, each light flickering to life in a dazzling display. Cheers erupted around us, the sound echoing off the surrounding skyscrapers. We clapped and laughed, basking in the warmth of the moment, feeling the magic of Christmas envelop us. After the ceremony, the crowd began to disperse, families heading back to their hotels or continuing their evening festivities. My family and I decided to walk back to our hotel, the streets still lively with the remnants of the night's celebration. The walk should have been straightforward, but the city felt different that night, larger, more impersonal, and somehow more menacing. As we navigated the crowded sidewalks, the neon lights of Times Square cast long, colorful shadows that danced around us. I felt a tap on my shoulder and turned to see a man standing there, his face obscured by the brim of his hat. He gave me a polite nod before disappearing into the crowd. I shrugged it off, assuming he was a fellow reveler enjoying the festivities. But as we continued our walk, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. It was subtle at first, a fleeting glance over my shoulder, a shadow that lingered just out of sight. I tried to dismiss it, focusing on the laughter of my children and the joyous chatter of my wife. Yet, every time I looked back, there was no one there. The streets were packed, yet I couldn't shake the sensation that someone, or something, was following us. Linda noticed my unease. "Everything okay, Tom?" she asked, her brow furrowing with concern. "Yeah, just a bit crowded," I replied, forcing a smile. Nothing to worry about, but my heart raced, and my palms began to sweat. The city's hustle and bustle seemed to amplify my anxiety, the sounds around me blurring into a cacophony of indistinct noise. Quickened my pace, eager to put distance between us and whatever or whoever was trailing us. We turned a corner, heading toward our hotel, but the streets had changed overnight, construction work altering the usual layout. I glanced around, trying to find a familiar landmark, but everything seemed unfamiliar. My phone showed no signal, leaving me feeling isolated and vulnerable in the vast urban landscape. Suddenly, Emily tugged at my sleeve, pulling me toward a narrow alleyway that led to a side street. "Daddy, I need to use the bathroom," she said, her innocent request giving me a brief respite from my anxiety. "All right, sweetie, I'll wait here," I assured her, watching as she and Jake darted into the alley. As I stood there, the feeling of being followed intensified. I turned again, and this time, I saw him, the same man from earlier, standing just a few feet away. His face remained obscured, but there was something unsettling about his presence. He wore a long coat that fluttered in the cold wind, and his eyes seemed to bore into mine. Unblinking and empty, I approached cautiously, unsure of what to expect. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice wavering. He took a step forward, his movements slow and deliberate. "Beautiful night, isn't it?" he said, his voice calm but carrying an eerie undertone. I forced myself to maintain eye contact, searching his face for any sign of recognition. "Yes, it is. Are you lost?" He chuckled softly, a sound that sent chills down my spine. "No, not at all. Just enjoying the festivities." Before I could respond, he turned and began to walk away, blending seamlessly into the crowd. Relief washed over me, and I turned back to check on my family. They were fine, laughing and oblivious to the tension that had gripped me moments before. We continued our walk, the streets now eerily quiet as the night deepened. The bright lights of the city seemed to cast long, haunting shadows that twisted and contorted into grotesque shapes. The cold bit into my skin, and the feeling of being watched never left my side. As we neared the hotel, I felt a sudden pang in my chest and stumbled, tripping over an uneven patch of pavement. Linda reached out to steady me, but the moment our hands touched, I looked up and saw her standing across the street, a vision of pure white amidst the darkness. She was dressed in a traditional Christmas dress, her hair flowing softly around her face. Her eyes were vacant, staring into the void as if she were seeing something I couldn't. For a split second, I saw the reflection of the faceless man standing beside her, his empty gaze fixed on us. Before I could process the sight, she vanished, leaving me standing alone on the cold sidewalk, my heart pounding in my ears. I looked around, but there was no sign of her, no trace of the woman in white or the mysterious man who had haunted my steps. Shaken, I helped Linda to her feet, the unease now bordering on terror. "Let's get inside," I urged, pulling her toward the hotel entrance. As we walked through the revolving doors, the warmth of the lobby enveloped us, offering a stark contrast to the frigid night outside. I tried to shake off the horrifying visions, but the image of the faceless man and the vanishing woman lingered in my mind, a haunting reminder of the inexplicable events of that night. Back in our hotel room, I recounted the night's events to Linda, her eyes wide with concern. "Maybe it was just your imagination, Tom," she suggested gently. "It was a stressful evening." I nodded, though the fear still gnawed at me. We decided to go to bed early, hoping that a good night's sleep would help dispel the lingering dread. But as I lay in the darkness, the sounds of the city fading into silence, I couldn't escape the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Around midnight, the room grew unnaturally cold, my breath visible in the air as I pulled the covers tighter around me. I heard a soft whisper, barely audible over the ticking of the clock. "Help me!" I sat up abruptly, scanning the room for any sign of intrusion. There was nothing, just the familiar furnishings and the comforting presence of my wife. But the whispering continued, growing louder and more insistent, as if coming from within the walls themselves. "Eleanor, Eleanor." My heart skipped a beat as the name resonated through the room, a name I couldn't place but felt deep within my soul. I reached out, calling out softly, "Eleanor." The temperature plummeted further, and the shadows in the room began to dance and twist, forming fleeting shapes that vanished as quickly as they appeared. I felt a presence behind me, a cold hand brushing against my shoulder. I spun around, but there was nothing there, only the oppressive silence and the lingering whispers. Desperate for answers, I grabbed my phone and tried to call my friends, but there was no signal. The feeling of being watched intensified, the whispers turning into mournful cries that echoed through the room. "Eleanor, please, help me." I backed away from the wall, heart pounding, tears welling in my eyes. "What do you want?" I demanded, my voice trembling. The room seemed to warp around me, the walls closing in, the shadows thickening with sorrow and anger. I felt an overwhelming sense of loss, as if the spirit of a woman named Eleanor was trapped within the confines of our room, her pain binding her to the mortal world. Eleanor lost her way. Help her find peace. I sank to the floor, the weight of her sorrow pressing down on me. How can I help you? I whispered, tears streaming down my face. The shadows receded, and the room returned to normal, the temperature rising as the whispers faded into silence. Exhausted and emotionally drained, I collapsed onto the bed, my mind racing with thoughts of Eleanor and the inexplicable events of that night. The following day, I decided to investigate further, determined to uncover the truth behind Eleanor's haunting presence. I reached out to local historians and residents, digging into the archives for any mention of a woman named Eleanor connected to the Rockefeller Center or the Christmas tree lighting of 1992. It was during my research that I stumbled upon a forgotten newspaper article from December 1957, recounting a similar incident. A woman named Eleanor had attended the tree lighting ceremony with her family, only to vanish without a trace shortly after. Witnesses had reported seeing her spirit lingering near the tree, her presence marked by unexplained lights and eerie cries. Her disappearance had never been solved, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and lingering fear. The parallels between Eleanor's story and my own experiences were uncanny. I began to wonder if her spirit had somehow crossed paths with mine, seeking closure or perhaps vengeance for her untimely disappearance. The notion was chilling, but the evidence was undeniable. Determined to help, I decided to return to Rockefeller Center on Christmas Eve, hoping to communicate with Eleanor's spirit and put an end to her restless torment. Armed with my notebook, camera, and a deep sense of empathy, I ventured back to the heart of the city's holiday celebrations. The night was cold and clear, the sky a tapestry of stars reflecting the brightness of the illuminated tree below. The crowd was once again gathered, their excitement undiminished by the years that had passed. I found a quiet spot near the base of the tree, the same spot where Eleanor had vanished decades earlier. As the countdown began, the atmosphere was electric, the air thick with anticipation. 10, 9, 8. The crowd's energy built with each passing number. 3, 2, 1. The tree lights ignited, bathing the area in a brilliant glow. Cheers erupted, and the crowd erupted in applause, celebrating the culmination of the night's festivities. I stood there, hoping to catch a glimpse of Eleanor, to offer her the peace she so desperately sought. And then, amidst the revelry, I saw her, a figure in a flowing white dress, standing just beyond the tree's light. Her face was pale, her eyes empty yet filled with a profound sorrow. She reached out toward me, her hands trembling as if trying to convey a message that words could never capture. I took a tentative step forward, my voice barely above a whisper. "Eleanor." She nodded slowly, her gaze locked onto mine. "Thank you for not forgetting." As I extended my hand, the air around us shimmered, the lights of the tree casting long shadows that danced like ethereal flames. She touched my hand, her presence both comforting and heartbreaking. "Find peace for us all." Before I could respond, a gust of wind swept through the square, the snow beginning to fall in gentle flakes that blanketed the ground. Eleanor's form began to fade, her essence intertwining with the light and snow, until she was nothing more than a memory, a whisper carried away by the winter breeze. The crowd continued their celebrations, unaware of the silent exchange that had just taken place. I stood there, tears in my eyes, feeling a sense of closure and peace that had eluded me for so long. Eleanor's spirit had finally found the rest it so desperately sought, her sorrow lifted by the acknowledgement and understanding that only empathy could bring. As the night drew to a close, I felt a profound connection to the spirit world, a reminder that some souls linger not out of malice, but out of unresolved pain and longing. The experience taught me that compassion and understanding could bridge the gap between the living and the dead, offering solace to those who had been forgotten by time. Years have passed since that Christmas Eve, but the memory of Eleanor's spirit remains etched in my heart. The Rockefeller Center Christmas tree lighting continues to be a beacon of hope and joy, its lights shining brightly against the winter night. And every year, as I watch the tree illuminate the sky, I remember the night I helped a restless spirit find peace. A reminder that even in the midst of celebration, there are stories of loss and longing that deserve to be heard. Story number 6. Vanishing Lights. The Christmas Disappearance of Eleanor Hartley. The Rockefeller Center Christmas tree lighting was the highlight of every New York winter, a beacon of hope and joy that drew thousands to witness its annual transformation. I never missed it, not since Eleanor and I had moved to the city. That Christmas of 1957 was meant to be no different, but it became a night that would haunt me forever. Eleanor Hartley was the love of my life. We had met in college, our bond forged over shared dreams and late-night conversations. By the time we moved to New York, we were inseparable, our lives intertwined with plans for the future and the excitement of city living. Christmas was our favorite time, a season that encapsulated everything we cherished: family, friends, and the magic that seemed to permeate the air. That December, the city was cloaked in a blanket of snow, the streets sparkling under the glow of holiday lights. Eleanor and I had decided to make this Christmas extra special. We booked tickets for the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree lighting, determined to create memories that would last a lifetime. Little did I know, those memories would become a nightmare etched into my soul. The evening was chilly, but the warmth of the crowd and the festive decorations made everything feel magical. We arrived early, securing a spot among the throngs of people gathered around the towering tree. The air buzzed with excitement, voices mingling with the strains of Christmas carols played by the orchestra. Eleanor held my hand tightly, her eyes shining with anticipation. As the countdown began, the energy in the crowd intensified. 10, 9, 8. The voices grew louder, the tension palpable. 3, 2, 1. With a burst of light, the tree ignited, each strand of light casting a mesmerizing glow that reflected off the snow-covered streets. Cheers erupted around us, and I pulled Eleanor close, reveling in the moment. But amidst the celebration, something strange happened. An unearthly silence fell over a section of the crowd, broken only by the sudden appearance of a blinding beam of light. The beam emanated from the very top of the tree, converging into a singular point before descending rapidly toward the ground. I turned to Eleanor, but her face was gone, replaced by sheer confusion and fear. Panic set in as I scanned the crowd, searching for her, but she had vanished without a trace. "Maria!" I shouted, using her middle name, hoping someone would recognize her. But the crowd around us remained oblivious, absorbed in the wonder of the illuminated tree. My heart pounded in my chest as I pushed through the people, desperate to find Eleanor. Her absence was a gaping void, her laughter and warmth nowhere to be found. I retraced our steps, weaving through the bustling streets, the festive lights now feeling cold and indifferent. The beam of light had disappeared as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving behind only lingering whispers and a sense of unease. I reached the nearest police station, breathless and frantic, but the officers dismissed my claims as the product of an overexcited mind. Days turned into weeks, and Eleanor's disappearance remained unsolved. The police conducted searches, questioned witnesses, and scoured the area, but no evidence led to her whereabouts. Friends and family rallied around me, offering support and comfort, but the pain of losing Eleanor was a wound that refused to heal. As Christmas approached the following year, the memory of that night weighed heavily on me. The lights at Rockefeller Center seemed to mock my loss, their brilliance overshadowed by the darkness that had taken Eleanor from me. I avoided the tree lighting ceremony, unable to face the symbol of that fateful night. But curiosity and unresolved grief gnawed at me. Determined to find answers, I delved into the history of the Rockefeller Center tree lighting, poring over old newspaper articles, police reports, and eyewitness accounts. It was during this research that I stumbled upon an old, forgotten story that sent chills down my spine. In 1957, the same year Eleanor disappeared, there had been reports of strange lights and unexplained phenomena around the Rockefeller Center. Some witnesses described seeing ghostly apparitions near the tree, while others reported hearing disembodied voices crying out in anguish. The most disturbing account came from a street vendor who claimed to have seen a woman standing beneath the tree, her face obscured by shadows, as a beam of light enveloped her before she vanished into thin air. The description matched Eleanor's, the same spot, the same mysterious light. It was as if the spirits of the past had intertwined with our present, leaving behind a trail of sorrow and unanswered questions. I couldn't shake the feeling that Eleanor's disappearance was more than just a random act of tragedy. It was something supernatural, something beyond my understanding. Determined to uncover the truth, I returned to Rockefeller Center on Christmas Eve, the same night that had stolen Eleanor from me. The area was thrumming with activity, people bundled in coats and scarves, their faces lit with joy and anticipation. I positioned myself near the tree, the memory of that night vivid in my mind. As the countdown began once more, I held a small, worn locket close to my chest, a keepsake from Eleanor, a symbol of our love and the bond we shared. 10, 9, 8. The crowd chanted, the excitement building. 3, 2, 1. The lights on the tree ignited, casting their brilliant glow over the gathering. I scanned the crowd, heart aching for any sign of Eleanor. Then, amidst the sea of faces, I saw her, or something that resembled her. She stood beneath the tree, her figure illuminated by a strange, ethereal light. Her eyes met mine, filled with a sorrow that mirrored my own, and she reached out a hand toward me. I took a tentative step forward, my breath catching in my throat. "Eleanor," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the roar of the crowd. She nodded slowly, her form wavering like a reflection on water. "I couldn't stay. Something took me," she replied, her voice a haunting echo that resonated deep within me. The ground beneath us began to tremble, the lights flickering erratically. The beam of light that had disappeared the previous year reappeared, swirling around Eleanor as if trying to pull her back into the tree. The crowd began to murmur, sensing the disturbance, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from her. "Help me," she begged, her voice filled with desperation. "Find peace." Before I could respond, the light intensified, enveloping her completely. A powerful gust of wind swept through the square, sending snowflakes swirling around us. The beam of light ascended rapidly, connecting with the top of the tree, and Eleanor was pulled into the vortex, her form dissolving into the lights before my very eyes. The crowd erupted in chaos, people screaming and pushing to escape the sudden storm of snow and light. I stood there, heart pounding, unable to move, watching as the tree's lights returned to normal. The beam gone without a trace. Eleanor was gone, once again, leaving behind nothing but the lingering echoes of her plea and the haunting memory of her disappearance. In the days that followed, the event was written off as a bizarre anomaly, a freak occurrence during a festive season. But I knew the truth. Eleanor's spirit had reached out to me, seeking closure and peace that she couldn't find in life. The beam of light was more than just a strange phenomenon. It was a bridge between the living and the dead, a conduit for spirits yearning to be remembered and released from their eternal anguish. Driven by love and a desperate need for answers, I dedicated myself to helping those who had lost loved ones to mysterious disappearances. I became a paranormal investigator, traveling the country to uncover the truth behind haunted places and restless spirits. But no matter how many cases I took on, none were as personal or as haunting as the night Eleanor vanished beneath the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree. Years later, I still visit the Rockefeller Center tree lighting every Christmas, not for the spectacle, but to honor Eleanor's memory. I stand among the crowd, the lights twinkling above me, and I hold the locket tightly, a reminder of the love we shared and the bond that transcended death. And sometimes, just sometimes, when the night is quiet and the lights shimmer just right. I catch a glimpse of her, her sorrowful eyes meeting mine, a silent plea for peace that will never truly fade. Eleanor Hartley's disappearance remains an unsolved mystery, a chilling reminder that not all who wander are lost, and not all who vanish leave behind answers. But in my heart, I know that she found a piece of peace that eluded her in life, a moment of connection that bridged the gap between our worlds. And every Christmas, as the lights of Rockefeller Center shine bright, I feel her presence, a whisper in the snow, reminding me that love and loss are eternal, and that some spirits never truly fade away. Story number 7. Shadows of the Rockefeller Tree. The chill of December in New York City was biting, the air crisp with the promise of snow. I remember that night in 1932 as vividly as if it were yesterday. The Rockefeller Center Christmas tree lighting was the event of the season, drawing crowds from every corner of the city. The excitement was palpable, the air thick with the scent of roasted chestnuts and hot cider, and the sounds of carols filling the streets. I was there with my friends, eager to witness the grandeur of the towering tree and the dazzling lights that would soon illuminate it. We arrived early, finding a good spot near the base of the massive tree. The structure itself was a marvel, adorned with thousands of lights and decorations that sparkled against the night sky. The crowd buzzed with anticipation, faces lit with joy and the festive spirit. As we settled into our seats, the conductor began to lead the crowd in singing, the harmonious voices rising in unison, creating a sense of unity and celebration. The moment we had all been waiting for approached quickly. The countdown began, and the energy in the air intensified. 10, 9, 8. The crowd's excitement reached a fever pitch, each number bringing us closer to the grand illumination. 3, 2, 1. With a collective breath, the lights on the tree ignited, bathing the area in a brilliant glow. The sight was breathtaking, thousands of lights twinkling like stars, reflecting off the snow that had begun to fall gently from the sky. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause, the joy of the season encapsulated in that single, magical moment. But amidst the celebration, something felt off. It was subtle at first, a fleeting shadow at the edge of my vision, a whisper of movement that disappeared when I turned to look. I shook off the unease, attributing it to the excitement and the sheer number of people around us. Yet, the feeling persisted, a nagging sense that something or someone was watching. As the night progressed, we mingled with other attendees, sharing stories and enjoying the festivities. The warmth of the crowd and the lights of the tree created a comforting atmosphere, but my mind kept drifting back to that fleeting shadow. I tried to ignore it, focusing instead on the laughter and the joyous chatter around me. Around midnight, the event began to wind down. The crowd started to disperse, heading back to their homes or continuing their holiday celebrations elsewhere. My friends and I decided to linger a bit longer, taking in the last of the night's magic. It was then that I saw him, a man standing near the tree, slightly apart from the crowd. He was tall, dressed in a dark coat that contrasted sharply with the colorful lights surrounding him. What struck me most was his face. It was completely blank, devoid of any features. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, just smooth, empty skin where his face should have been. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, someone in a mask perhaps. But as I looked closer, I realized there was no mask, no anything that could explain the absence of his features. He stood there, motionless, staring directly at me. My heart began to race, a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. I nudged my friend, Jake, pointing him out. "Do you see that guy?" I whispered, my voice trembling. Jake followed my gaze, his eyes widening in disbelief. "Yeah, I do. That's creepy." We exchanged uneasy glances, the festive atmosphere now overshadowed by the presence of the faceless man. The crowd around us continued to celebrate, seemingly oblivious to his existence. It was as if he were a ghost, visible only to those who dared to look closely enough. I felt a shiver run down my spine as the man began to move toward me, his steps slow and deliberate. I tried to back away, but the crowd around us pressed in tighter, making it difficult to maneuver. My friends pulled me back, their faces pale with fear. "Let's just leave," Maria urged, grabbing my arm. "This isn't normal." We made our way through the crowd, but the man seemed to follow, his presence a constant, unsettling shadow. Every time I glanced back, he was still there, closer now, his featureless face fixed in a haunting stare. The lights of the tree flickered, casting long, eerie shadows that seemed to dance around him. As we pushed our way toward the exit, the sense of being watched intensified. The whispers I had heard earlier returned, soft and sorrowful, blending with the sounds of the city night. "Leave us alone," the voices seemed to say, though no one else appeared to hear them. We finally broke free from the crowd, the bright lights of the street welcoming us back into the safety of the familiar. I glanced back one last time, and the man was standing at the edge of the tree's glow, watching us with his empty face. When I turned back to face my friends, he was gone, as if he had never been there at all. The rest of the night passed uneventfully, but the image of that faceless man haunted my thoughts. The next day, I tried to rationalize what I had seen, but the fear lingered. I spoke to a few other attendees, sharing my experience, but most dismissed it as a figment of my imagination, fueled by the excitement and the countless people present. However, not everyone was so dismissive. An elderly man approached me, his eyes filled with a knowing sadness. "You saw him too, didn't you?" he asked quietly. "The man without a face. They say he's the spirit of a man who lost everything on Christmas night, unable to find peace and forever searching for what he lost." His words sent a chill down my spine. "What happened to him?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "He was a man driven by grief and anger, his spirit trapped by his inability to move on. He roams the grounds each Christmas, seeking solace that he'll never find." I nodded, the weight of his words sinking in. The faceless man was more than just a ghost story. He was a symbol of unresolved pain and eternal sorrow, a reminder that not all spirits find peace, especially during the season meant for joy and togetherness. That Christmas, the memory of the faceless man at Rockefeller Center became a personal reminder of the thin veil between our world and the restless spirits that linger in forgotten places. It taught me that even in the midst of celebration, shadows of the past can cast a long, haunting presence, waiting to be acknowledged and remembered. Years later, I still think back to that night, the sight of the faceless man a stark contrast to the vibrant lights of the tree. Sometimes, late at night, I hear whispers carried by the wind, echoes of sorrow that remind me of the spirits who never found their peace. And every Christmas, as I pass by Rockefeller Center, I glance up at the towering tree, wondering if the faceless man still watches, forever bound to the place where his story began.